Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
A global pandemic, floods, hurricanes, and now unrest in Ukraine. We'll talk all things state economy, U.S. economy, and global economy when Loren Scott joins us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
Louisiana has over 26,000 licensed companies that do business legally and meet the needs of our state. Before selecting a contractor, check references and verify the license at lacontractor.org. It's your money. Make wise decisions and protect yourself from being scammed.
Today we're in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana, where we're building terraces along the hurricane levee system. These terraces will provide shoreline protection in the marsh, which will protect homes and businesses in South Louisiana.
So our terracing projects is a great partnership with industry to prove that we can help the environment and protect our levee system. Without investments from the industry and companies like Chevron, projects like this would not be possible.
In Louisiana, oil and gas and the community are all connected.
Industry partners help Ducks Unlimited do what we do best, protect South Louisiana.
Protect yourself from the headaches of dealing with a non-licensed contractor. Go to lacontractor.org and make sure the person or company who wants to work for you is licensed by the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. It's your money. Make wise decisions and protect yourself.
For 8 seconds in the arena before an afternoon in the field. For a promise to students that honors success in the classroom. For championships earned on the bayou. For innovators committed to reclaiming our coastline. The universities of Louisiana. For your future. For our future.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Noted economist Dr. Loren Scott is our guest. Welcome back, my friend.
I'm glad to be here.
We got lots to talk about, don't we?
There's a lot going on.
Oh, man. So I'm going to just jump right into it. We mentioned before we started taping today that as we tape on Tuesday morning here in Baton Rouge, that just this morning, President Biden has put a complete ban on Russian imported oil. We're already looking at $4.20 some places, regular gas prices in Louisiana. Where's this going? What does it mean?
Well, we're in for a lot worse, as it turns out, because if you look, it takes a while for the increase in the oil price to actually show up at the pump. Well, if you look at just the last week or so, since the end of February, the price of oil has gone up $25 a barrel, $25 a barrel in about a week's time period. Well, basically, for every time the price of oil goes up $1, the price of gasoline goes up about 4 cents. So even before this ban, we're expecting the price of gasoline very soon to go up anywhere from $1.25 to $1.50 a gallon.
Wow.
Simply because of what's happened in the last week. We haven't felt that yet at the pump. But the time this is aired, you'll start to feel it for sure. Okay. But now you put a ban on Russian oil totally, then that's going to take even more oil off the market. And you learned in your Principles of Economics class a very important tool, and that is the demand curve. And the demand curve for oil is very steep. The economists would say it's very inelastic. Now, what that means is it doesn't take much of a change in the supply to cause big changes in the price. And so you take, Russia produces about 10% of the oil in the world, and you start taking that off the market. A lot of it's already come off the market. Or even if you put the fear of it coming off the market, you're going to see that supply curve start to shift backwards, and you're going to start seeing the price go up a good bit. I think we haven't seen the last of this. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Obviously, the worst we've ever seen. I think we're seeing some of the highest gas prices across the United States in the history of gas prices as we speak today. And you say that it's going higher.
Yeah, we had some prices near this high in 08, but I think it's going to get a lot higher. But we didn't. In that case, we didn't have this much oil being taken off the market. This is a lot of oil. Now, the peculiar thing about oil is a commodity. It's very fungible. And there are, as it turns out, about 3,700 very large crude carriers floating on the surface of the ocean, taking oil wherever they get the highest price. So it's going to be a little bit of a difficult problem keeping Russian oil totally off the market, because you have countries like India and you have countries like China. Countries like North Korea are tiny, they don't matter, but China and India matter a whole lot. And if they continue to buy the oil, there's going to be an incentive for them to buy the oil, because now Russian oil is going to be a lot cheaper than the oil, the regular oil that we're consuming out there. So China and India, who have a little bit of sympathy towards Russia, are going to still be buying the stuff. But it's still going to be a problem for us, so expect higher gasoline prices.
In the lead up to this war in the Ukraine, there was a lot of conversation, particularly in a state like Louisiana, an energy producing state, where energy and oil exploration and production are so critically important to our economy, about the overall Biden administration energy policy, right? And a lot of criticism about that. And the fact that in some ways we had gone from reaching some level of energy independence in this country over the last few years to going back to being dependent. A couple of questions on that, Loren. The first is, isn't energy independence more than just an economic issue, a national security issue for the United States?
Well, if you don't believe it, you don't believe that, just ask the Europeans right now. I mean, the Europeans right now, Putin has them, okay? He's got them in his grips right now, because they decided to go as far as they could on the renewable side and away from any fracking within their boundaries. They were just going to rely on wind. Well, the wind quit blowing in the North Sea, duh. And as a result, they have to rely on natural gas coming from Russia. And so the price of natural gas went straight through the ceiling. It's up around $30 per million BTU compared to $4 here. So they were just getting killed. And the reason for that is because they had to rely on somebody else to fill in the gaps when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And so if we're not careful, that's our problem, okay? If we start stopping our exploration for oil and natural gas here, we're gonna be dependent on somebody else. We're gonna be dependent on the Middle East or whatever. And when things get tough, they've got us, just like right now Russia has Europe.
Look, I don't think any of us want to argue about the development of alternative energy sources, right? Wind, solar, all these renewables, great projects taking place. But for a long time, we are going to remain dependent on crude oil as our main energy source. We've seen the tapping now of strategic petroleum reserves, right? We're going to go in and use some of that oil. Do you think that this, either in the short term or long term, will represent enough pressure on the Biden administration to begin to loosen some of the domestic restrictions that they have put in place?
Well, there could be a lot of screaming about natural gas, about gasoline prices. I mean, that's really starting to hit people in their pocketbooks. And they vote according to their pocketbooks. And this coming November, they're going to look at that. And so, but I got to tell you, the people surrounding Biden are very religious about this. I mean, they are huge believers in this, and I'm not sure going to be able to move him off the target. And I think as a result of that, there's going to be some price to pay coming in the fall elections.
We'll see how that plays out. Obviously, elections have consequences. We know that.
Yeah.
We'll see how that plays. Let's take a break. We come back. I want to jump into Louisiana's economy, what the pandemic has done, what it looks like as we come out, what this means for our energy sector, all of those things. We're visiting with Dr. Loren Scott, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
With over 50,000 students in higher education in the capital region, finding a great intern or employee shouldn't be complicated. The Baton Rouge Area Chamber is teaming up with local colleges and universities to help businesses find their next hire using Handshake, the largest early talent recruiting platform connecting employers, talent, and colleges all in one place. Learn more at brac.org/handshake.
The LCTCS Foundation advocates for every Louisiana community and technical college in the system to keep them on the cutting edge of training and technology. Aligned with businesses across the state, they ensure students develop the highest possible level of skills, keeping Louisiana business and industry ahead of the pack. Visit this website to support the LCTCS Foundation for a higher Louisiana for all.
Plants would not be operating if they weren't operating under the regulations to keep everybody safe and keep the environment safe.
It also goes back to the end products that our raw materials go into.
Solar panels,
windmills,
reusable bottles. Primary product is acrylonitrile, which is used to make carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber in an airplane is used to make it lighter.
By reducing weight, we indirectly help the environment because it uses less fuel. And for us to make products that help reduce carbon footprint is a big deal.
So, how can I help you today?
Maybe you're looking for a bigger home. Maybe you have plans to grow your business. Or maybe all your plans have just changed. For the better. Whether you're planning for the future or just looking for a bank that cares about you. If you have a goal, let's make it happen.
This is what you're looking for.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Economist Dr. Loren Scott is our guest. So we've got this global energy economy unrest taking place. What does that mean specifically for Louisiana and its energy sector?
Well, in the past, it would have meant there'd be a whole lot more exploration for oil. But given what the Biden administration is doing, especially what they're doing with regard to the Gulf of Mexico, it's just real problematic. I mean, before 2014, back in 2014 when the price was this high, we had 60 rigs drilling out there. We have about 16 right now, and it hasn't changed very much, not likely to change very much, given the Biden administration's attitude towards that. On the other side of the coin, though, we have developed a major LNG exporting business.
Liquefied natural
gas. And that is, you're going to see at least 2 more of these being built, I think, in the state starting this year. You're going to see Venture Global down in Plaquemines Parish. You're going to see Driftwood over in Calcasieu Parish.
These are massive projects.
These are massive projects. These suckers are anywhere from 8.5 to 16 to $20 billion project. These are massive projects. And the reason they are sitting pretty right now is because we're selling our natural gas overseas based off the Henry Hub price here, which is around $4. They'll add a liquefaction cost to that and transportation cost. The people who are buying natural gas from places like Qatar and Australia, they have long-term contracts with they're basing their price off the price of oil. Well, they take about 15% of the price of oil, and that's what they sell their LNG for. Well, there is no way they can possibly compete with us right now. I saw yesterday where the price of LNG was $72 per million BTU.
I've never heard of anything.
We'd be selling ours for about 7.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no way they could possibly compete with us. So there's 2 things good here. One is the LNG business will be great for us. And 2, because the price of natural gas in Europe and Asia is so much higher, their chemical firms, even more their chemical firms, are going to start looking at South Louisiana and say, we need to go someplace where this natural gas is cheap. So hopefully we're going to see some triggers pulled on some new chemical firms coming to the southern part of the state.
Does that represent a continuation of this trend that you hear Dr. Greg Upton at LSU and others talk about as Louisiana moving away from being necessarily primarily an exploration and production state and more to a chemical processing state? I know LNG is not necessarily chemical processing, but it's a little bit different than what we've seen before. Talk about that trend.
Well, I mean, I think there's certainly something there because this big gap that existed between the price of natural gas here and the price in Europe started back in around when the fracking really took off in about 2009, 2010. And we had this sudden big gap, and so we had all these chemical firms. We had a tremendous amount of firms coming to our state. And I think what is happening now will make that even better for us. Right. So that's going to help on that side. On the exploration part, the primary place in our state that will gain is Northwest Louisiana, up around Shreveport, where the Haynesville Shale is. This is a dry play. That means they can only get natural gas out of it. And so you're already seeing the rig count. What was around 16 there, it's up to almost 40 now.
Wow.
And we even have, matter of fact, I mentioned Driftwood a while ago, the facility that wants to be built in Calcasieu Parish, Lake Charles. They want to own their own gas supplies. So they are leasing land like crazy in the Haynesville Shale so that they can have their own gas supply coming down to feed their place. So I think the northwest part of the state is setting pretty. The southern part of the state, in terms of exploration, not so pretty. Because if you're onshore, you've got the legacy lawsuits that are just, nobody wants to drill in South Louisiana onshore because of the legacy lawsuits. And then offshore, 3 miles offshore, once you get 3 miles offshore, you get into federal waters where, again, Mr. Biden is creating problems for us.
It's going to be interesting to watch, I guess, over the next weeks and months, how energy policy in the United States might evolve based on what we're seeing in the Ukraine and in that part of the world.
Yeah, because once you start hitting people in the pocketbook, your whole attitude starts to change.
Makes a difference. Let's talk, about 2 minutes left in this segment. We'll carry it over to the third segment. But let's talk about Louisiana's overall economy. We're coming out of a pandemic. We've got all of these energy issues that we're facing globally. You do, on an annual basis, this Louisiana Economic Outlook.
Right.
Give us an idea of where we stand.
Well, of course, we took a tremendous hit when the COVID hit. We lost 278,000 jobs overnight, just like that. That never happens. I mean, it's the worst that we've ever experienced in our history by far. Matter of fact, it's the worst the United States ever experienced in its history by far. Now, the good news is we've been coming back, but the latest numbers for the end of 2021, the end of 2021, we'd only gotten back about 60% of those jobs. So we have a ways to go. And hopefully 2022 is going to be the year in which we get almost the rest of it back. Part of our problem is going to be New Orleans, because New Orleans is a big convention city. We have one of the largest convention centers in the United States in New Orleans. And people are just not having conventions, not gathering in person yet. And I know this well because part of my job is public speaking at conventions. And I got to tell you, that went in the tank in 2020 and stayed there through 2021. So in New Orleans, it's big. It's the biggest city, metropolitan area in our economy. And it's gonna be still a drag for us until the convention center starts to come back.
I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to get into this whole idea of employment in our state, right? And employment across the United States. One of the things we hear about on the federal level is how low unemployment is now. But people are still looking for jobs. People are having difficulty finding people to fill those positions. The Great Resignation, I know, is a topic for economists. We'll visit about that. We're visiting with Dr. Loren Scott. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Growing up in Baton Rouge, I used to always pass up ExxonMobil, but I never thought that I would actually have the opportunity to get on. But what I thought was impossible turned out to be possible. So I just feel like it's just a wonderful opportunity to be able to provide for my family.
We are committed to being a community partner. We are actively working to recruit the talent here in Baton Rouge, and we want to bring them into our workforce. We're ready.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Dr. Loren Scott, economist, is our guest. We hear a lot about the Great Resignation, right? That unemployment's low across the country in terms of the way the federal government reports it. But what is the true story in terms of employment, both nationally and in Louisiana, Loren?
Well, the key thing, I think, for people to look at in terms of the general health of the economy is not to look at the unemployment rate, is to look at the employment rate, how many people are employed. And there's some good news. We had very good numbers the past few weeks. If you look at the unemployment rate can go down for two reasons. One is that more people are being employed.
Right. But
the other way it can go down is people quit looking for work. You know, they drop out of the workforce. And you mentioned the Great Resignation, and there's a whole set of problems here why people are not coming back in the workforce after the shutdown. I mean, part of it is that, especially this age group from about 55 and over, they have not come back the way the rest of them have. Some of the people have dropped out and just said, I'm going to stay out for whatever reasons. Maybe they're afraid to go back in the workforce because of the COVID. There's another set of people out there who have children. Maybe schools have been shut down and they can't go to work because they've got to stay home and take care of the kids and also help them with schooling. So that's part of what's going on here too. The other thing that's going on is last year, there was a huge amount of money pumped into people's pockets through there were two federal stimulus checks, and then there's the child tax credit, temporary child tax credit. If you were in a family that had two kids under 6 and two kids that are from 6 to 17, you're getting $13,000 a year from the federal government, okay? And then if you were unemployed and getting unemployment insurance, there was that $300 bump on top of that.
That's right.
Now that went away in September, okay? But some people were able to, to keep their acorns in the tree, enough acres of the tree to kind of stay out of the workforce until maybe the fear of COVID has gone away. So, but, I mentioned that employment-wise, we're only 60% back. Nationwide, I'm not sure what the number is, but nationwide, we're very far from being all the way back to pre-April 2020.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see now, as we talked about earlier in the show, if the unrest in Ukraine and these global economic issues begin to have an impact on employment here as well. Let's talk, you mentioned stimulus, right? And one of the things that I believe governments at all levels should be investing heavily in is infrastructure, right? Now, you can argue the merits of the bill that was passed on the federal level for the stimulus and some of the things that made their way into that package. But infrastructure investment creates economic opportunity, it creates jobs, it creates payroll, it does a lot of really good things. And there's a lot of money coming Louisiana's way as part of this package. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, here's first of all, let's just start by looking at the bill. As I understand from talking to Representative Graves and some others about this, you have the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. Now, what most people need to understand is that half of that was just putting into place something that was about to phase out.
Right.
That is, we send the gasoline tax money to the federal government, they send it back to us. Now that whole process was about to phase out, and every so many years they have to re-up it.
Right.
Well, half of this $1 trillion was just re-upping that. So that's not going to change very much. The question is this other half that's really important. And within that, there's all kinds of things that are in that. There's improving the internet in rural areas and all kinds of things. But there's a chunk of that where the Biden administration has a lot of discretion in determining who's going to get stuff. We're not really the right color state to expect to get a whole bunch of that, unfortunately, unless something really changes. What we would hope is there's a chunk of that we can get. Now, there's some other stuff that's going to be in there. There's going to be some things for more EV charging stations, which if EV, one of the great gateways that we're going to have to get through to get EVs, electric vehicles out there a lot, is there's got to be more charging stations. Right now, we don't have them, especially in Louisiana. We don't have them. So that's in there too. But like you say, infrastructure, good. It's darn good that they re-upped that bottom part. We'd have really been in trouble without that.
Be interested to see how that plays out in Louisiana in terms of desperately needed improvements to our
Like 2
infrastructure.
bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
2 bridges, one here, one in Lake Charles.
A couple of minutes left. I want to hit on 2 things. First is sort of your prediction on where all this may go. I'm asking you every time you're on the show to look into your crystal ball. I know it's particularly difficult right now, but your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is particularly difficult right now. I mean, a lot depends upon how long it's going to take to resolve the Ukrainian thing. That's just going to dominate everything, and who knows how long that sucker's going to last. Who knows when he's going to quit, or if he's going to try to totally take over Ukraine. Who knows that if he's successful in getting Ukraine, if I was in Taiwan, if I was in South Korea, I'd be really worried about this. If the West lets this happen, are they going to let China take Taiwan, or are they going to let North Korea take South Korea? That's going to create some incentives for some really bad players out there. Right now, I think it's a coin flip about how this is going to turn out.
It'll be interesting to see that as well. You know, you've been on this show a number of times, Loren, and I've never asked you about your own company. Tell us about, and we got about 30 seconds left here. Tell us about Loren C. Scott and Associates.
Well, we do primarily 2 things. We do public speaking. I do several speeches a year, which that is way off from what it is because people aren't gathering for the most part. But the other thing is we have a consulting part where we do basically impact studies. We look at the economic impact, for example, of Sasol building their new facility. What is that going to mean to business sales and household earnings and local government revenues and that sort of thing? So that's kind of the main thing that we do in that part of the business.
If people want to get in touch with you relative to those services, what do they do?
They just call my cell phone, 225-937-4283.
We'll put that up on the screen as
Excellent.
well. Dr. Loren Scott, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Always very informative. We're grateful for your insight, my friend.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.